Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Zaituna Azasu. I work with the African Women's Development Fund, a consortium member of AmplifyChange program. I am a team member of Learning, Monitoring and Evaluation Working Group, the organizer of these learning webinars, and I am your moderator for today's webinar. The main purpose of organizing these webinars is to share best practices and lessons from those implementing various projects. It is grantees-led, and presentation are all made by grantees. Today's webinar is the third in series and is focused on transforming social norms. We will have a presentation on shifting attitudes and norms in the Muslim communities about sexual and reproductive health rights issues, and this will be done by Fadahili, the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Muslim Youth Development Organization.
Well, thank you, Zaituna, for this opportunity. And thank you to AmplifyChange also for the opportunity to share the little work we are doing with the larger team of the AmplifyChange family. I also want to invite the other participants who are not AmplifyChange employees or the grantees. I'm just going to share the work we are doing in Kenya in the next few minutes. Just to take a background, as you've been told, my name is Fadhili Msuri, the CEO of Kenya Muslim Youth Development Organization. This is a national youth-led organization that was it's focusing on enhancing access to sexual reproductive health and rights among Muslim adolescents in Kenya. So I'm going to start my presentation, and I'm going to start by answering the question of the why. Why did we decide as a Muslim entity to focus more on our sexual reproductive health and rights? For a very, very long time, or almost a decade, there has been a missing link of the faith-based organizations in SRHR interventions globally. Our contribution is very minimal due to several factors. And one of the factors that is the debate on the permissibility, applicability, and acceptability. Permissibility in the sense of there is that feeling among the religious communities that issues to do with sexual reproductive health are not permissible, more so on the types of interventions. And on the debate about applicability, there's always been a dilemma in terms of how do we apply our interventions targeting the faith community without sounding or looking antagonizing to them or unsettling their belief. And acceptability, how wide are we going to be accepted in terms of our interventions by this very important and critical community? It's also very important to note that globally, a bigger percentage of health facilities are controlled by the faith religious bodies. Like in Kenya, we have like 60% of health institutions are under the care and leadership of the religious organizations. So it creates a very nice platform for interventions targeting the faith community. The other point about the why is the perception. Religious values vis-a-vis human rights stroke reality. We all have those set of values that we hold dear to our lives. And at times there's always that conflict between the values and the issue of human rights and what is happening in the reality. That has always been the bone of contention among religious organizations and the mainstream CSOs, because at times there is no definitive answer on how and when to draw the line when an issue is perceived to be crossing the religious value border. But looking at it from the other angle, there's a human rights perspective. For example, there's a very hot global debate about abortion. From any religious perspective, they'll tell you abortion is outrightly illegal or not allowed. But when you come to look at it from the reality of the human rights perspective, there's the element of issues to do with rape cases. There's the element to do of defilement, and there's the element to do of the future of our girls who get pregnant because of several factors, and they want to continue their education, and the growing number of girls who are procuring abortion through harmful procedures, and they're losing quite a big number of them. So what becomes the direction? So the issue of perception is also one of the questions we're trying to answer. Then the last question on the why are we doing this intervention is about the growing numbers and statistics. We have buried our heads in the sand for a very long time, but the numbers do not lie. We are having, for example, the Kenya scenario, quite a growing number of teenage girls and adolescents who are not able to complete their education at the primary level because of pregnancy-related issues. Some are married off at an early age, others get pregnant, and others due to other factors. So these numbers and statistics do not choose either your religious belief, your cultural background, but they cut across. So with these growing numbers and statistics, we ask ourselves meaningful questions. Do we ignore these numbers or do we intervene? Because we care about the growth and the progress, and all religions are for the development of the society, then there is no need why we should not intervene in addressing the issues of our SRH among our teenagers and adolescents. So that's why those are the convincing factors among many others on the why. I'll go to the next slide on the approach. So how are we doing it as a Muslim entity? In Kenya, we have two levels of government, the national government and the subnational government, popularly known as counties. These counties are led by an elected governor with their own legislative assembly, just like the parliament at the national level. Now, there are several parts in Kenya which have a higher percentage of Muslim population, like the northeastern part and the coast part of Kenya. The Muslim population is very high. And in those parts, they lead in terms of, especially at the coast, we have counties there leading in the number of teenagers getting pregnant before the legal age of 18. We have high cases of child marriages. We have high cases of FGM and so many other factors affecting the SRH aspect of these teenagers and adolescents. With all this in mind, when designing an intervention targeting such a very powerful and a hostile county per se, because this subnational setup have their own push and pull factors. And some of these factors dictate the direction which these counties or subnational government take. So in designing any intervention, you have to be very, very sensitive and very cautious not to look as if you want to disrupt the normal system, or not to look as if you want to antagonize the belief of this kind of a target group. So you have to be very, very creative and very cautious on how you intervene, addressing the issue without looking as if you want to disrupt the system. More so, without being viewed as if you want to introduce something to change the religious belief of such a community. So how did we do it or how are we doing it as an organization? Number one, our identity. It is always, there's an argument that cuts across. If you want to reach a young person, the message will be more embraced if it's delivered by a young person to a young person, peer-to-peer approach. If you want to reach, for example, the Catholic community, the message might be easily accepted if it will be delivered through a Catholic mechanism. If you want to reach or to deliver anything to a Muslim community, the message will be much easily accepted if it's delivered through a Muslim entity. Because number one, such an entity or messenger understands the religious environment, the approach, the views, and how to break the ice. So for us, what is working best for us is that number one, we are a faith-based organization. a youth faith-based organization. So we know the sensitivities, the approaches on how best to reach this very critical community. So number one, we build consensus. We were able to reach out, first of all, to the National Muslim body in Kenya, that is the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims, to secure their consensus and buy-in and support of the project. They are like the endorsing mechanism of any interventions in the country that are to reach the Muslim community. So once you get their buy-in, it becomes easier to reach out other Muslim entities and communities in general. So we secure their buy-in because we used a human rights-based approach. We did not go through the other aspect. We went through a human rights-based approach where we presented the facts and the figures and scenarios of how best can we intervene, guided by the growing reality of what is happening. Luckily, the national government in Kenya has an interfaith network that engages religious bodies in Kenya. And the issue of teenage pregnancy, issues of the growing number of abortion, issues of young adolescent teenagers engaging in drug abuse, poor disjointed approaches in enhancing their SRH has been noted among the key concerns. So there's that discussion going on at the national level on how best can the faith community be used to do this. So we got the buy-in from the Supreme Council and their support. Then we went to the counties where we are working, the subnational government, to also secure the support and buy-in of the several stakeholders, including the government itself, the non-governmental organization at the county level, the key community leaders or gatekeepers were very influential, and also the adolescents themselves and the women leaders. Once we were able to secure that, then the project got what we like calling like an endorsement per se. Now you can come and intervene. Luckily, through this consensus building, we're not doing it alone. You are working hand in hand with the Ministry of Health. So that is from the government side. So the Ministry of Health were doing a lot of delivery while we were there to support and secure that confidence from the Muslim community. After that, the other approach was we went through the capacity building approach. We identified and selected key champions who have been engaged before. Just to mention, this grant for us is a second grant. It's a build-up of a previous grant that we are doing. So we already have what we are calling the sexual reproductive health champions, from the adolescent, from the parents, from the scholars, from the teachers within Muslim institutions, who are champions championing access to information and the services of SRH among adolescents. So these champions were given more information, life skills approaches on how best to engage and to champion SRH issues for adolescents. Then after that, the environment was ready to conduct some of the in-reach and outreach sessions. And here we targeted schools, community, and health facilities. In schools, we trained quite a big number of, currently we're working with over 200 adolescents in schools who are reaching out to their fellow peers in schools with information about SRH and trying to demystify some of the myths and misconceptions on sexual reproductive health. Remember, in school, a very critical element whereby some of these adolescents are going through puberty, so a lot of issues and questions arises. So if they don't get the right information, then they're bound to be exposed to the wrong information that leads to so many undesired outcomes. Then at the community level, we have now the parents and the key gatekeepers who reach out to their fellow community members through what you're calling the barazas or the platforms that always happen on a monthly basis. When they meet to discuss their community development issues, we always get around 1 hour to do sensitization on SRH. And even at times, through the Ministry of Health, they always come and provide and do service provision. And some of this service provision could include at times condom demonstration and distribution, referral for health services to health facilities. And then we have the health facilities where they're doing also their own outreaches. When those who are referred for services, they go within the health facilities. They have sessions once a week. Every Thursday is like the community day within the facilities. The service providers are able to reach out to community members and give the desired services. Then the other one, we did develop a toolkit. We realized that for our work to be effective and for sustainability, we have Muslim institutions in Kenya called madrasas all over the world, just like the Sunday schools, where the young Muslim adolescents go to get the religious knowledge. So we decided to target these madrasas because we realized in their curriculum or syllabus, SRH issues is missing. So the best way to do it was to have a toolkit that is talking about SRH from a Muslim perspective. If you're targeting a Muslim adolescent, what is the best approach to use in reaching them with such an information? If you're targeting a Muslim scholar, what is the best approach to reach this Muslim scholar? So this toolkit was developed by a technical group that comprised of supportive Muslim scholars, the adolescents themselves, and the teachers themselves. So we have a toolkit that is being used in those institutions, and currently the country is trying to develop what they're calling a comprehensive sexual education toolkit in Kenya, which has faced a lot of resistance from the faith communities. So there's a lot of discussion in terms of how best do we come up with a toolkit that can address the sexuality of adolescents without being viewed as promoting what is being called immorality. So luckily for us with this toolkit, the government is also trying to look at it to see if they can borrow some of the aspects in the toolkit to enrich the national curriculum if it's going to materialize. Then lastly, we have the advocacy platforms. Currently in this second grant, we have established what we are calling a Muslim Adolescent Alliance on Reproductive Health. This alliance is to enhance the adolescent agenda at the county level. We want the county governments to dedicate a budget line to support and to strengthen adolescent SRH issues within the county. It was one of the key issues that when you have a discussion with service providers, they tell you that they are underfunded by the county government and even the national government. We felt because there's a lot of money being misused here and there, why don't you combine our forces and efforts as adolescents, other practitioners? And this is not just limited to the Muslim community, but it is targeted at the counties which have a 95% Muslim population. So we are doing advocacy forums to the county governments to secure or even to increase funding on SRH issues so that the adolescents can access when they go to the facilities, they can get the services without delay, quality services that is timely, and the service providers can honor their community obligations without saying that we don't have funds to do this and that. And these are very key strategic approach because if this culture is adopted by the county government and the national government, then we are sure of sustainability because currently our health system, more so behavior change programs, are 95% donor dependent. So if a donor pulls out, then there's a big, huge funding gap. So those are the 5 approaches that we're using in this intervention. Back to go to the next slide. Along our implementation timeline, we have faced a lot of experiences. We have recorded good moments, challenging moments. Just a few of the case studies that we have that we feel they're strengthening our resource to deliver. Number one, we have quite a very efficient, knowledgeable pool of sexual reproductive health rights champions that has a representation from the religious scholars, the young people themselves, the women, these are the mothers, the girls, teenagers and adolescents, and health officers. So within the counties where we work, we have a cohort of champions who are reaching out to their fellow peers with such information and even referring them to facilities for services. Then the other one, we have the toolkit on a comprehensive sexual education from a Muslim perspective, which are calling the Aminali toolkit, that is strengthening the delivery of SRH sessions in Muslim institutions. We have a functional advocacy platform, which I've just mentioned, the Muslim Adolescent Alliance on Reproductive Health, that is pushing the advocacy agenda in counties, especially more on budget advocacy in terms of introduction of budget lines and increasing of budget towards SRH votes. We are also witnessing now an increased dialogue on SRHR among the faith communities in Kenya. As a result of this, we have also seen an increase among the donor community in Kenya with a bias towards strengthening the faith-based institutions to deliver because of the trust and the present capacity they have within the country. We're also witnessing an improvement in the access to SRH services among adolescents. We're also seeing that, like I've just mentioned, the increased recognition and acceptance that faith can actually be a promoter to SRH services, but not to be viewed as a block to SRH services. If the faith community is engaged in dialogue, they can play a very positive, wider role to ensure that adolescents and teenagers are accessing SRH services without being discriminated, and so on. Some of the challenges and barriers that we are facing in our implementation: number one, there's always be those people with opposing views, and we're seeing that growing number of extremist or negative perception of SRH interventions, being viewed as if you're trying to introduce something foreign, a Western culture to dirtify our religion. We don't need this. This is an agenda from the West. Why are you bringing this here? We have our own set of values. So these issues keep coming up along the way. And like I've mentioned also, the issues of budgeting. SRH interventions in Kenya is being under budgeted by the county governments because of over-reliance to donors. Then we have gender dominance in health service, with service access and rights. The issue of gender, more so in terms of the girls and women. We are witnessing quite a low number of girls accessing health services because of societal, cultural, and religious misconceptions. Then we have also religious facilities like the mosques, the madrasas, the schools, not being utilized as centers for SRH service access. This can actually end the prejudice that religious institutions are not supportive. If they will decide to pitch camp in a mosque and offer SRH service, it can go along with demystify some of the myths and misconceptions. Then, of course, we have quite a low number of religious leaders trained as champions. Our support can only go to a certain level. So we have a target of a bigger number, but because of several factors, we have a low number of religious leaders. If we have a huge number of them coming out and speaking, then that can go a long way in giving confidence to young people to access this kind of services. Then we have very low intergenerational engagement skills between the scholars, the parents, and adolescents. We are having very weak system of dialogue between the adolescent and parents and religious leaders. The adolescents, a bigger number of them do not feel safe discussing their SRH with their parents or even the religious leaders, vice versa. The parents, some of them do not feel comfortable to talk about sexuality with their children, or even the scholars or religious leaders do not feel confident enough to talk about sexuality within the religious setup with adolescents because of the negative attachment that has been attached whenever you mention the word sex or sexuality. They feel as if you're trying to promote immorality. So those are some of the challenges and barriers that we are experiencing, among many others. Like I said, my presentation is going to be very, very minimal. I think I've come to the end of my presentation at this juncture. If there's any question, any recommendation, any experience, I'm here listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Hili. So use the chat box, and if you have questions, comments, or any additions to Father Hilly's presentation, it's now time. I can see people are using already the chat box and already discussing. I see some French comments as well. Unfortunately, today's presentation is in English, but we'll make the same presentation available in French very soon. I see some people are typing, so just give us a few minutes so we will go through the questions or clarifications or comments one by one. Okay, we have, I think, a question or a comment from Musa. Say many thanks for great and clear presentation. Want to hear more how you managed to engage the high-level religious council, because in Zimbabwe it has been a challenge getting them to come on board or even to engage them.
Thank you, Musa, for that question. I agree with you. It's never easy to try to engage some of these religious authorities, because remember, you're trying to, for them, they view as if you're trying to introduce something new, because the system, the way it has been set, is that anything that starts with the word sex is viewed negatively. But how did we manage to engage our council here in Kenya? Like I said earlier, we identified some of the moderate voices within those councils who are more development oriented, and we reached out to them. We had a discussion with some of them, and we use them now as influencers within that council. And then when the entire council was now willing to reach out to us, we were able to use the human rights approach in terms of, yes, we agree, we don't talk about this, but the reality is that we are having an increasing number of Muslim teenagers getting pregnant, and yet they're attending all these Muslim institutions, they're going through religious education. So what is going wrong? We appeared more of like we are trying to seek their support on how to end this culture. That's how they view it. So it's more about how we package our intervention, and you can use your own scenario depending on their thinking. If they want you to use other words, you can still use the other words, or even the title, because the delivery of the agenda is the same. Once you secure their buy-in, it becomes easier to engage. Also, in Kenya, we have interfaith platforms that exist. And some of these interfaith platforms have very active SRH departments. So they're being used in HIV intervention, family planning, programming, and all this stuff. So there are so many avenues in which you can use to influence. But most importantly is the use of moderate ambassadors within those councils who can actually guide you and use them to influence the perception and attitude. And even at times questioning, is the religious value or belief really against this, or does it have an opening? Because no religion is locked, the window is never locked. There's always an opening somewhere. So once they're able to start doing in their mind, then they're able to open up, and then you can easily have your intervention rolled out. Thank you.
There are a number of questions that are already in. The one I am seeing is from Kevin, which wants to know that If advocacies for increasing SHR budgets have been successful, and if so, what has been the technique used to convince public officials? If not, what were the issues faced?
Well, I'll say that one is a bit 50-50. Currently in Kenya, we're having a national debate about teenage pregnancy. It's becoming a crisis. Every year, during the final primary examinations, we have, like last year in one county alone, we had over 13,000 girls who did the exams in a hospital or a delivery room. And these are girls I'm talking about 14-year-old, 13-year-old, 12-year-old girls getting pregnant. So when this became a national agenda, then the public perception decided to shift. Because people are now viewing that this is somebody's daughter. The parents have worked hard to put them through the school system, to pay school fees for them. Then somewhere along the line, several factors take advantage of this, and the hopeless girls become vulnerable, and they end up getting pregnant. And once they get pregnant, they drop out of school, others go get married at a younger age, and a bigger percentage of them gets their dreams shattered of becoming maybe whatever they want to become in life. So when this has become a national agenda, the public focus shifts slowly. But of course, there are those who also believe that this is a matter of a personal choice. So we don't need to bring a national outcry out of it. But a bigger percentage believe that it's a key issue. Our adolescents need intervention. They need to know about their sexuality for them to prevent themselves from contracting infections and all that. Currently, we are grappling with a very vibrant adolescent population that has exposure to all manner of information through internet and all that. So if you don't give them the right information, then they might not have the capacity and skills to prevent other factors influencing their lives. Thank you.
There's another question from Rebecca. She said, we are based in Rwanda and currently working on ways to engage religious communities and faith leaders. Would you be able to share the toolbox that you developed for Muslim communities?
Yeah, sure. I'll be able to share it. Then maybe through the AmplifyChange platform, can distribute to the other grantees for their use. No problem.
Thank you. Nazini, I'm sorry if I have not spelled your name right. The question is there any Stigma works on sexual reproductive health right issue?
Well, it is. The stigma is there, very big, very huge. Yesterday, we had a court ruling in Kenya that the government, there was some guidelines on safe abortion that were developed some few years back, but the government withdrew those guidelines. Several years back, there was a young girl who went to procure an abortion, but she died because it was done through what you call those dark clinics. So the doctor used very dirty metal rods to insert in her, and she died along the process. So civil society organizations came together and went to court to petition the government. The court to reintroduce those safe abortion guidelines. And yesterday, there was a landmark ruling that reintroduced the safe abortion guidelines. So when this scenario happened, a lot of stigma was introduced, and it's there always. You are creating an environment where you're saying it's okay to have careless, sexual activities, without caring about this. You are promoting this immorality. A girl that is pregnant does not deserve to go back home. She needs to be chased away. She's bringing shame to the family and all those issues. But at times we ask them, like, yes, we agree. It has happened. A young girl has become pregnant. But remember, she didn't get pregnant by herself. There was a factor that contributed to her being pregnant, like the boy child. Number two, what was the surrounding environment like for her to become pregnant? There was no information. Maybe if she had information about, for example, protection, she would have used protection. And what you like calling like reduce the lesser evil of if that's what they label it, of not getting pregnant, but at least she has protected herself. So stigma is there. It will always be there. It will never come to an end because the society has those who are always in support and those who will always be opposing. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question from Jane. She would like to know, what strategies have you put in place to reach out to Muslims with disabilities, given that their sexual reproductive health right needs are always forgotten?
Thank you, Jane. I must agree with you. It is true, and I must admit here, I feel very shameful to say this. We have no strategies of engaging the Muslim with disabilities, but I thank you brought this up. We will try to use the Muslim Adolescent Alliance on reproductive health to try and reach out these Muslim with disabilities and put them in the mainframe. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much.
Okay, Musa would like to know, how has the political leadership in your country supported your work, seeing that the political voice is influential in shifting social norms?
I agree with you. The political power is very, very influential. And I think it cuts down to the gender, because if you look at the male politicians, they tend to sit back and not bother. But the women politicians have become like ambassadors. They speak out in defense. They even have their own lobby on gender violence. So they speak out and they ensure that friendly policies on SRHR pass within the assembly. So we have more women politicians in support than male politicians. So the environment among the politicians is safe. It's just that there are few. It's a male-dominated field, but they're trying the best they can, and we try at times to tap into their influence, at times to get to achieve some of objectives.
By the way, all those asking questions say thank you very much for the presentation, even though I have not mentioned those things while mentioning only the questions. Payao said, I have a monitoring and evaluation question. How do you know that your approach is working? What do you track on an ongoing basis to know that you are on the right track?
Thank you, Payao. We have a monitoring strategy that we use. Like we always meet our peer educators on a monthly basis, some of these champions on a monthly basis, to review and track progress of what you have done in the month and to plan for the way forward. Number two, we do referral tracking. The government facilities have a referral booklet that when some of our peer educators refer their fellow peer educator facilities, because we have linked some of these institutions with the health facilities. So we also try through the referral, through the service providers, who also some of our champions, to see how many of those referred actually went for that type of service. Then that tells us that actually we are influencing. And at times also we also do our own physical visitation on a quarterly basis to our project site, and even some of the beneficiaries that have been reached, to try and assess the extent to which this intervention has impacted on their lives. Yeah.
Okay, Puru Sotam says, in India, though a secular country, still religion plays an important role. In the name of religion, we face challenges of personal law prevails. In the name of religion, personal law, the gender violation takes place, particularly in sexual reproductive health right issues.
I agree. It's not easy, and I think different countries have different setup. Like in Kenya, we have some. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just correcting my own. The question itself, in the name of religion, we face challenges of personal law prevails. In the name of religion, personal law, the gender violation takes place, particularly in SRHR. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I agree with that sentiment, and I think it's just a matter of finding the best strategy to influence some of that, because at times we tend to see some of those laws being biased towards to a certain extent. So I think it's about how best do we design an intervention depending on a country-specific need, because each country have their own unique needs. So it also you need maybe a different intervention of the sort.
Yeah. And there are some few chats, I think, following the question from Purusotam. Is there any stigma works on SHR? And there are, I think, question addressed to him and addressed to the person, and the response following that. Yeah. Yeah. And then there's a question in French. MSA.
Hello. Hi. Yes. The question is whether I think questions can be asked in the chat box in French. Yes, please put them in French in the chat box, and we will try to translate it in English. But ideally, we'll respond in English, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And there's a question from Abdullah: how to convince the religious leaders who see in your activities the manipulation by the whites? Wow.
Yeah, I agree. It's true. Like I said in the present, there's that perception that SRH intervention is a Western infused ideology that is meant to destabilize the religious establishment or belief. So it's all about how best do you package your intervention. And here I will want you to use more of, like I said, the moderate voices within the religious system that you can use them as messengers to deliver your agenda, and let them to see more of the benefit than not to see more of who is supporting it, but to see in terms of yes, even if it's supported from the West, is it of benefit to our community or not? Yeah.
Jane said, thank you so much. My organization would be interested to work with you on SRHR of Muslim women with disabilities.
Yeah, we can exchange contacts, Jane. I think that's a very good strategy idea. Can exchange contacts, then we can pick it up from there. I believe she's from Kenya.
Probably she contacts. Maybe she's from Kenya or maybe from any other country. Maybe we'll wait for her for some few minutes to respond. Yes, I am from Kenya. Yeah, she just responded.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any more questions or comments? Oh, yes. Journalists Against AIDS. Given Islam belief in polygamy, how do you manage these beliefs with the need to protect and promote SRHR? We also have worked with people with disabilities on sexual reproductive health rights.
Like I said, packaging your intervention not to be seen as disruptive to people's belief is one of the strategies to ensure that you have a very easy ride in implementation. Those beliefs in polygamy are there, they'll never change. So it's just a matter of how well do you promote access to information and the services on SRHR. Because this boils down to a personal choice. If you choose to have 4 wives, it's up to you. But how do you ensure that even those wives have information about the power over their body, that they can even access services that is relevant to them within their present scenario? So I think basically just focus more on awareness creation and promotion of services. Yeah.
I see Hussein Rahman typing, but the question has not come yet. Let's just give him some few minutes. Okay, I think it's a comment. It says, to me, religious precepts are either misinterpreted or misapplied. How do you address this misconception in the minds of young girls and boys in our communities?
Well, I agree with you. At times we really blame, at times religion carries a very heavy load of blame due to our own misinterpretation and misapplication of it. And once you start interrogating some of these religious texts, then you'll find that is true. I think what we need to focus more on the minds of young girls and boys, and it is important for them to be firm in their religious belief, but at the same time, have a free mind in terms of giving them the right information about their sexual health and reproductive health system, so they can know their options. When they are faced with a scenario whereby they have to make a choice, then they should be able to be in the right frame to make a healthy and informed choice.
Okay. Abdul Sami says, as I caught your attention is a mix of policy and grassroots level initiatives. How could you bridge communication between these two important layers in your project? Any dialogue, exchange of ideas, or so on?
Thank you, Abdul, for that. Like I said, we have the Muslim Alliance, Advocacy Alliance on RH. It's a national level alliance that has grassroots representation, and this can basically strengthen the dialogue between the various generations. That is the government services, the religious leaders, the young people themselves, and so forth. And this is just basically to enhance the views of the adolescents. What are they saying from the grassroots level up the national level? If there's a national policy making process going on, what is the communication of the young adolescent from the grassroots level that comes up to the national level, just to influence and to try to ensure that their communication is captured and not just perceived that this is what they want. So we do that through the dialogue, and also that creates a platform for exchange of ideas and so forth. So the Muslim Adolescent Alliance becomes our main platform for that bridging. Thank you.
Muhammad bin Bunbida said, we at the Muslim Family Counseling Service has been using multi-phase approach to address sexual reproductive health rights. May I know if there is any multi-phase manuals for interfaith advocacy?
Well, luckily I know Mohammed bin Bida. I've interacted with him. We have met face-to-face in several platforms, so I'm glad for his question. I think we have our toolkit, the Aminali toolkit, that is very, very convenient, that can be used by any other person, not necessarily a Muslim. So once we share that, you'll be able to, because we have actually borrowed heavily from several manuals. Even from the Christian perspective, we have borrowed some key component, key messaging. So, yeah.
Digui says, do you think that to work with Muslim leaders, you should know and understand well the Quran?
No, I don't think that's a condition. Any person should be triggered and should be conscious of the reality that our adolescents are facing currently, whether you understand the Quran or the Bible, but the tribulations and the challenges that the adolescents are going through is enough standing for you to engage with the Muslim leaders or even the religious leaders in trying to get them to be supportive and responsive to the challenges faced by adolescents. But of course, it's also good to, if you're a religious person, it is also good to understand your religion. But if you can't, there are those influential people you can use as messengers who are well learned that we use at times as champions to engage with scholars if they decide to go the philosophical way. Yeah.
There is a comment from Vivian for you. I can only read the first one. Say, Fadahile, Shukrani. That's all.
Yeah, I get the message. She just needs to maybe put her number also so that I can reach out to her.
Okay, I think a number of people are interested to receiving and contacting you. Some are already putting their telephone numbers as well as their email addresses. I think you are taking note of those things. Okay, are there any more? So you can see Fadahili's telephone number as well as his email addresses. If you are interested in the topic and want to know more, you can contact him. I think he has given us permission. He has put it out there, so you can copy the address. There are more people typing. Somebody said, could you share with us the presentation materials? As I said earlier, the recordings of the presentation will be made available on AmplifyChange website. It might take some few days, but after that, you will find the presentation there. In fact, all the series so far, all the webinars done so far. Okay, kindly share tools. Fadahili, you are seeing them, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing them.
A lot of questions for you.
Yeah, it's always exciting when an interfaith approach is being shared.
Interesting, yes.
Yeah.
Some people say, don't forget to translate the tools in French.
Yeah, we'll come back to AmplifyChange to fund the process.
Yeah. I think the other ones coming are just email addresses and requests for sharing in the link. We have some few minutes left, and we have come to the end of today's webinar, but I would like to share some information about upcoming webinars. We have one in June. We have one coming up. Wait just a minute. Yes, on June 26th, on tracking progress in changing policies and laws. I want to say thank you very much to Fadahili for sharing your experience with us. It was enlightening and lessons shared are useful. Thank you very much. And thank you, my colleagues Payao and MSA Tom, for helping in organizing this webinar. And thank you all for attending and taking part in the discussions. I think we have come to the end of our webinar, and I wish you all a nice day. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.